A show with a passion for poultry coming up right after this. During my years as a garden designer, I've enjoyed helping homeowners create private sanctuaries full of beauty and wonder. I find each garden to be a fresh opportunity to explore and create uniquely personal spaces. These are just a few of the gardens I've helped transform into garden homes. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to The Garden Home, a show about design and blurring the lines between inside and out, among a lot of other things. In today's show, we're going to focus on a passion for poultry. Now, if you haven't noticed, people have gotten really excited about having chickens in their backyards. And we're going to talk about some of the breeds that are great for that, plus many of the breeds that I keep out here for the Heritage Poultry Conservancy, like these big Jersey black giants. Also today, we're going to visit a few poultry experts about black turkeys, Aylesbury ducks, and comparing chicken breeds. Plus, I'll show you several interesting birds that I have here at the farm and their unique living quarters. We'll also talk about the importance of poultry shows. Okay, before we head off now to take a look at some turkeys, I want to talk just a minute about this breed, which is the Jersey black giant. It was introduced in the late 19th century, 1880s, 1890s, in New Jersey by a family by the name of Black. These birds were developed as big roasting chickens. This rooster will probably weigh about 13 pounds. He's a big boy. They're a dual-purpose breed, and the hens lay nice brown eggs. You might give them a try. All right, let's head off and take a look at some of those black turkeys. Over the years of the Garden Home Retreat, I've maintained heritage poultry breeds of various sizes. A little later in the show, we're going to take a look at bantams, the pint-sized members of the poultry family. But right now, I want to introduce you to one of the largest birds we raise, the black turkey. Marjorie Bender with the American Livestock Breeds Conservancy recently visited the farm and explained the importance of preserving these heritage turkeys. Margie, I'm going to let them out. Here we go.
Look at those beautiful birds.
They are really a lot of fun to have around. We have about 13 of them, and they're about 4 months old.
Oh, very good. So they're about halfway through their growing period.
That's right, yeah. I know as a child I was fascinated by turkeys. You know, I think the symbol of Thanksgiving, and you see these enormous birds, and I mean, it's so proud that they're an American species.
They were domesticated in Central America, and then when the Spanish came over and were exploring the New World, and they took them back to Spain with them. They spread throughout Europe, and in Spain they were called the Black Spanish. They were popular in England as well, and they were called the Norfolk Black there. Well, then when we colonized, they brought their turkeys back with them, and amongst them were the blacks, and they actually crossed them with the Eastern Wilds. This combination became our black turkeys.
Help me understand from the American Livestock Breed Conservancy standpoint, are they in fairly good shape from a population standpoint and from a genetic standpoint? Or are we losing ground?
Just if we look at numbers, I can say that we're improving. In 1997, we did a census, and there were a little over 1,300 breeding birds, and that's how we measure the population health, because the breeding birds actually create the next generation. We are now at about 1,500 breeding birds. So that's, in that period of time, that's a huge increase in population. There are a number of varieties of heritage turkeys, as we call them, or standard varieties of turkeys, and those populations remain endangered.
So what we're about here is really trying to do just that, just maintain a certain level of strong genetic viability among these two breeds, the blacks and the slates.
Yeah, and what I love about what you're doing here is you're actually focusing your attention and you're focusing your energy. It's real tempting to get one of each and to spread them out. But what you've done is you said, I'm going to do a very good job of conservation with these two varieties of turkeys.
We're endeavoring to do that, and our blacks are larger than the slates, so we're using the blacks to try to get the size of the slates back up.
Yeah, and they're techniques, they're skills that you're learning, and they're things that people used to know how to do really well, and some of those those skills and those talents are being lost, and you're rediscovering your eye. You're developing your eye for type for the birds, and you're developing your understanding for what it is to create that bird so that you can make good choices of who goes into the breeding flock.
That's right.
And I'm so pleased to see that you are an active breeder and really helping to make sure that these turkeys have a place in our lives in the future.
Well, thank you for your enthusiasm and support.
You're welcome.
Now I want to show you this really unique breed of geese, and I'm just going to kind of ease down here so they'll calm down. These are Sebastopols, and what's interesting about them is that they carry a gene for a curly feather. So their beautiful white feathers actually curl and cascade off their backs. They're considered a small to medium-sized domestic goose, and they originally come from the area around the Adriatic Sea. Now, we keep a small breeding population of them here because there really aren't a lot of them around. So while they're not on the critical list, they are considered on the watch list, meaning that there aren't huge populations of them, but they're not as in a critical state as some breeds of waterfowl and domestic poultry. Now, in this pen, what I do is I lock them up at night so predators will not attack them, their young, or take their eggs. We have A-frame shaped nesting boxes that they get in, and they lay large white eggs. And we take these eggs and we set them in the incubator to hatch the goslings, and it takes about 30 to 33 days to hatch one of these geese. Now, the way I have designed this pen is that they have this shelter where we can keep them in at night, but during the day it opens up to where they have access to water, which is important for the fertility of the eggs. We need about 14 to 18 inches of water for the pairs to mate in. It really increases the fertility of the eggs, and it also allows them to play. They're waterfowl. They love to get in the water and swim and talk to one another. I like having geese around because they're a very social form of poultry. They talk to each other all the time, and they're great watchdogs. If someone comes up that they haven't seen before, they'll certainly let you know it by honking and squawking. One of the great annual events every fall in Arkansas is the State Fair and Livestock Show. People flock in droves to the Midway for carnival rides, the food and games. I have to say one of my favorite places to visit this time of year are the livestock barns, and as you can imagine, I gravitate to the poultry show. It's there that breeders can show off their prized birds. Learn more about the hobby.
Every feather should be the same width of white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black.
And see a myriad of breeds. Keith Bramwell and I take a look at some very different, in fact, wildly different breeds. You know, Keith, I've been coming to these shows for years, and I'm always amazed every time by the diversity that I see among poultry.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun for me to come to these shows too, because I mean, you've got from the big, the small, the different shapes.
Yeah, I mean, this has to be one of the, I guess, freakiest of all breeds of all time.
Yeah, I agree. This the Silkie has got all kinds of different traits. I mean, the feather structure, they've changed the feather structure so it looks like hair, but it's really not hair. The crest on top, the little beard, you can see the color of their skin is a black color. The other interesting thing about these is not only is the skin black, the meat and the bones are even black. It's an interesting trait that goes all the way through the bird.
It's a very old breed, isn't it?
Very old. It's a Japanese Silkie, and they come from, of course, from the Asian part of the world. You know, they got feathers on their legs. They've got extra toes even. There's a number of different things about them, and there's a reason for these. At one time they bred these, and it's a kind of a traditional thing for meat quality. They like the dark-colored meat and the toes on them, but now it's become predominantly a show chicken, particularly here in the U.S. But it does exhibit a lot of different traits.
Beautiful. And then you take something like this. I mean, this is a little modern game, and you look at, I mean, a complete opposite.
Yep. Yeah.
No feathers on the legs, very tall and slender. almost dinosaur-like in its appearance.
And you know, one time it originated from your typical barnyard-looking type chicken.
And what's interesting to me is that both of these have very docile dispositions as breeds, don't they?
They do as breeds, and another thing that really affects that is also just how much they're handled. Because these are show chickens, people tend to handle them more and get them out. Like this one standing there, some chickens would be flying off trying to escape.
Right, and he's not nervous at all.
I think because they raise these for show, they're pets. They're also pets for people.
Yeah, all right.
So they handle them a little bit more.
If someone was starting out with a particular breed or two, what would you suggest?
I'd probably ask them, one, how much space they have.
Right.
A lot of these bantams are small. Some of the other ones are really big. I'd probably pick a very calm breed. You know, some of the Wyandottes are calm. But there's a lot of things that different people like about different breeds that, you know, someone will look at one kind that really fascinates them, and you know, that'd be something good to go for.
And it really requires surprisingly little space to keep some of these bantams.
Yeah, the bantams, you can keep a lot of bantams in a backyard situation and do well. Now, if you're too close to your neighbors, you got to worry about them crowing all the time.
That's right.
But yeah, you can really have a lot of birds and have a pretty good breeding program without not a lot of land for the bantams. So they're a good breed, and I think you see a lot of youth get into that side of it first because it's a little bit more economical to raise, space-wise and feed.
We spoke with Bantam judge Phil Bartz about the wide range of variety and how he approaches these breeds as an American Poultry Association licensed judge.
Well, there's over 100 different breeds, and within the breeds there's different varieties. Varieties of the color patterns, so there could be buff rocks, Plymouth rocks, as far as bards, buffs, silver pencils, blacks. Standard chicken is obviously a bigger chicken, which are going to weigh anywhere from 3 pounds and on up, and most of the bantams are 3 pounds and under, and very small miniature breed. Each breed and each variety has a set color pattern, set standard that I go by. But it's also important that we keep these breeds true to their intended purposes of when they were developed. Some of these breeds, such as Dorkings and Andalusians and Spanish, go back hundreds and hundreds of years. We hope that saving some of these breeds and varieties from years ago, we're saving genetics that could possibly help us out in the future. Well, I'm a big one for children, and I like to write comments on the cards to help them understand why I place things in a certain way. I want them to come away with a good feeling, whether their bird was, you know, right or wrong. I want them to go home and learn something and hopefully come back and bring something better. You got to have patience, and you got to stick with it.
During the year, kids work hard to raise and prepare their poultry. Many of these kids are members of 4-H and FFA, and it all culminates in this event. Exhibitors are rewarded with ribbons, trophies, and prize money. Allison McEwen, Livestock Director for the Arkansas State Fair, tells us how participating in the poultry show can be an enriching experience.
The poultry exhibition and livestock program is really important. It teaches young people life skills on how to care for birds and animals, and they learn responsibility, they learn competitive sportsmanship, they learn the importance of making sure that the animals are cared for, and they carry on these lessons that they learn all through their life. They also compete for scholarships and premiums that will help them continue their education and hopefully develop breeders who are going to be responsible adults in this industry.
The champion turkey was a junior exhibitor, so we went ahead and brought it up here and recognized it. It's a black tom turkey by Christian Hickenbotham.
Ceremonies like we had today for the Heritage Poultry Conservancy drive home several important points. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of a group coming together and recognizing their efforts. Many of these children have raised birds all year long. Certainly they have the joy of bringing the birds here.
Around 300 junior exhibitors compete for premiums and awards here at the poultry show at the State Fair.
Having the public a grandstand full of people applauding their efforts. It goes a long way to encourage them to continue to remain involved in raising poultry. As far as heritage breeds, and particularly the large standard breeds, I think a ceremony like this helps to draw attention. These breeds were actually the keystone of modern poultry, the poultry that we're now buying through commercial poultry and industrial poultry producers, but also lets them know there's an alternative out there that you can actually seek heritage breeds.
We hope that the future entails that we will be growing, that more people will continue to come, that we will increase our numbers, increase our exhibitors, and eventually just have a very outstanding show here at the State Fair.
Aylesbury ducks have an intriguing history, and they've been around for a long time. And at one time there were many of them, but now they're considered a very rare breed. Earlier this year, Frank Reese with the Good Shepherd Poultry Ranch came to visit me at the farm to discuss the history and importance of preserving the heritage of these beautiful birds. Frank, I can't believe how windy it is today. I'm so glad you're here.
Well, thank you.
You know, the Aylesbury duck has been around for a long time, hasn't it?
Yes, it's a very old breed. It's so old we don't even know for sure their complete history, but it's an old English breed of duck.
You know, we have been fortunate here to be able to collect 3 genetic lines of that duck. I was stunned when I began to collect these birds, how few there are left in the country.
Yeah, you probably have one of the bigger flocks that's even in existence in North America. There's just hardly anybody left breeding them, especially in any numbers. So what the work you're doing here is extremely important. And they're not the only bird in trouble. There's many of our varieties of standard bred poultry, the Jersey Giant, the Barred Rock, the Silver-laced Wyandotte, the old original meat birds, and there's many, many other varieties of poultry that are in great danger.
Now, you've raised poultry your entire life and know a lot about all the different species. But with the ducks, any advice as we move out of winter into spring?
Well, you know, this time of year for ducks, I mean, they do quite well in cold weather. And just getting ready for spring and that they have all of the water and feed and nutrition they need to lay good, healthy eggs. The majority of the time we get in trouble with a little duckling is because we let them get cold and we let them get wet.
Yeah.
Little ducks, believe it or not, drown very easily. And so you do have to just watch them. You are their mother. They're babies. They need to be watched. And you need to help keep them warm and dry and have good bedding and clean water.
Well, my hope with this series of strains, these 3 that we have, that we'll be able to hatch a lot of ducklings and really bring up the population of Aylesbury's and be able to offer them to other farmers.
Yeah, and hopefully you'll also become a center of teaching, a place in which people can come and learn what an Aylesbury is about and why that duck needs to be preserved and be part of our future.
Frank, so good to have you here.
Thank you.
We've recently completed construction on a shelter for our waterfowl. It consists of 5 different pens that are connected to the pond, which allows the ducks, geese, and the swans to get out and enjoy the water. You see, the fence goes all the way down to the edge of the pond and then actually out into the pond to some degree. It does this for the 5 separate pens, and this allows the separate breeds to be able to be on land and in the water. Now, this past fall, because we'd had some problems with predators, I decided to add extensions to each pen that have a tin roof and are totally encased in wire, and each contain nesting boxes for the birds. You see, in the past, crows would fly in and eat the eggs, and the young birds were being carried off by raccoons. Well, I'm happy to report, now that we have all of this in place, we've had no losses to predators, so I think we've got it in a good place for the future. You know, I have to say, I really enjoy receiving photographs from you of your homes with the idea of coming up with some ideas that might make it a little more attractive. Here in my design studio, we're doing it all the time, so if you have pictures, send them in to me. Today we have a charming cottage in Wisconsin. Now, David's telling us that this house faces the west, so it's going to get a lot of sun, and that he really would like to have a lot of flowers, a lot of perennials. He wants to keep everything low key. and low maintenance. So David, just a couple things I want you to think about. Let's think about the color of the door here. It's really a bright red. I would think about going to a really dark, almost blackish green for the door itself. And then I would think about shutters here in the same color on either side. It would really make the house a little more charming. The other thing I want you to think about is perhaps coming across here with a picket fence would really bump up the charm factor here. The picket fence needs to be, well, you know, about 4 feet tall, just slightly less than that, across here like this. You'd have a post here in the center and a post here in the center. And then you could actually plant a boxwood on the slope here, because you mentioned you like boxwood, so we'd have boxwood here. And then I would put a boxwood on this side of the step and a boxwood on this side of the step. And then underneath, right at the foundation, what I would do is come in here with some sort of low ground cover underneath, right around the window, and here, something that really turns a nice color in the winter, something evergreen, maybe Euonymus coloratus. It turns a nice bronze color, also called winter creeper. And then up here on the step, we need to have a pair of these where you can plant color here. So you really need some color, I think, up here in these containers, and they need to be fairly large. Then your opportunity for perennials really is here, all across this slope. You could even put another boxwood on the ends if you like. So let's just talk about that, a boxwood here. And then along this side of your property, you could bring a hedge of boxwood there, so you've enclosed this tiny little garden. And then on this slope, think about just some really basic plants that do well and bloom for a long time, like daylilies. Another one would be Russian sage, catnip. You could also add salvias, just whatever color theme you want, you could plant along this, and then think about on that picket fence growing some roses. And if you're really into roses, that back planting, you could plant knockout roses all across the back in a pale pink, bring a pink climber across the front here, and just plant out a lot of color along that slope. David, I hope these ideas work for you. You've got a beautiful cottage, and I think this will add a lot of charm. Good luck. I have to say I take a lot of pleasure from designing things, particularly when I can take something ordinary and create something extraordinary with it. For instance, these houses for our chickens are old cotton wagons that have, well, they've been retired, they're no longer used. So we put a wire floor in the bottom and put a roof on the top, and we can roll these around the pastures out here, and the droppings from inside the chicken house fall out onto the pasture and fertilize our fields. The chickens get the benefit of being able to go outside and scratch around and enjoy all of that green grass, and we also get delicious eggs from it. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I hope I've inspired you to maybe to think about having a few chickens for your own fresh eggs out of your own backyard. You know, once you get started with poultry, there really is a passion for it. Until next time, from the Garden Home, I'm Alan Smith. More information about today's topic and other topics covered in this series can be found at plansmith.com.